the very first thing that I do when I pack my backpack up is I get every single thing together that I think I'm going to take, and I start organizing them into similar groups because, of course, generally you'll tend to use all your sleeping stuff at the same time of day, and you won't need various pieces of it throughout the day, so that will affect where you pack it within your pack so that you can get to it all at once, etc. So, without going through every last little thing, I happen to have some things here that I always use at the end of the day, like my toothbrush, my toothpaste, some lotion, Vaseline. I have medication all kept together, kind of a first aid kit. So I kind of put those things together. I've already unpackaged and repackaged some of my food. So, the pepperoni that had big bulky boxes and stuff, I managed to get all into here. It's about half the size of what it was when it was packaged in this one Ziploc. Got all my granola bars and peanut butter crackers and stuff out of their big boxy packages and got them all into this one little thing. So, got that all already done. And then there may be some other categories of things as well. I've got some different electronics things in here. I have a USB drive for storing some files on and some additional batteries and things like that. So once I've done that, then really the very first thing that I try to do is figure out how I'm going to use each of these things, what the chances are that I'm going to use them throughout the day, and therefore how much ease of access do I need to have to get to them. So for instance, my sleeping bag, generally throughout the day, unless it got wet and I need to dry it out at lunch or something like that, I don't need to have access to it, so it's going in the bottom of my bag, it's going in first. Now that's not necessarily the only way you want to pack your bag, and I'll talk a little more about that in a second. But just to start out with, now that I've got everything out, I want to organize it, and so I'll usually just start on one side with the things that I know or I believe I won't need throughout the day that will go in the bottom of my pack, and then kind of move around to what probably won't need that either. Yeah, I might need that, might need to get to those a little bit more often. This stuff I definitely need all the time, all right? So let's start by organizing it that way. First of all, I know that when I pack for a thru hike, I can't get my sleeping pad since I don't use an inflatable pad. I can't carry that in my pack. So that's going to go on the outside, so I'll just leave that, aside as its own thing. I'll put it back here and we'll deal with that later. My sleeping stuff, so I've got my sleeping bag, I've got my Tyvek sheet for underneath my tent, I've got my tent. Those things I'm generally not going to need access to throughout the day. Now again, things do change, and based on, a week from now when I'm on the trail, I may very well say, you know what, my tent, I know I had to pack it up totally soaked. So maybe I'm not going to put it here. Maybe I'm going to put it way around here where I need to get access to it so I can put it on the top of my pack because I know I've got to get it out and let it dry. But today I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and put that stuff back here. This is the stuff that I don't need access to very easily. Now if we move down the line here, there's some stuff, like some of the things, more bathroom stuff and things like that, that I generally don't need throughout the day. So I don't, so I may take those, like my first aid kit. Now, if I need it, I'll certainly want access to it, but I don't access it that much. I generally put it further down in my pack. Now, I know some people really prefer to put it up higher in their pack in case there's an emergency, and that is your decision. Everybody kind of has their opinions. Once you start backpacking, once you start hiking quite a bit, you'll make up your own mind about those things. For me, that's something that I'm going to put a little lower in the pack. I've got an emergency blanket, some lighters. Again, all stuff that I want to get access to at the end of the day. So I'm going to put all those things together. I'm going to put them down towards the bottom of the pack. And I want to be able to access them as, at the end of the day, but I don't need it all throughout the day. Now I've got money, my ID, and a credit card as well. If I happen to know that I'm going to be stopping at a town, maybe in the afternoon or something, then I may pack this up a little higher in my pack. But when I'm first starting out, I'm not going to need this for, days. So I'm going to put it down here with the rest of this stuff, and it's going to go in the bottom of my pack. Now, I've got my puffy jacket, I've got all my clothes, I've got my food. So I'm going to keep the food together. The food is something that obviously you need access to. but you don't always need access to it all day long. You don't need access to it, every second. So I'll probably pack that somewhere kind of in the middle of the pack, and that gets me to one of the other things that you want to think about when you pack your backpack for a long hike, and that is weight distribution. So it's nice, ideally, to have things that aren't all that heavy in the bottom of your pack, and then have the heaviest stuff, and generally, kind of depends, but generally your food is pretty heavy and pretty dense, and maybe your tent as well, depending on what you have. So those things you might like to have in the middle, more in the middle of your pack, so that it balances better on your back, and then some lighter stuff on top. Now, it's impossible to do all of these things and have it work out perfectly, but that's kind of what we're going for. So I'll leave this here. Probably that will go sort of in the middle of the pack. Tennis ball, by the way, is for rolling out my feet at night, so I'll put it over here with that stuff. Now, what I just said about the food isn't totally true, because I do want snacks throughout the day. So I'm going to grab a couple of things. Let's say I grab a couple of granola bars, I've got a bag of walnuts. I'm going to take those, I'm going to kind of just set those aside here, because I want to put those in my pockets, my front pockets of my backpack, on my belt pockets. And in fact, I've got two pockets, so one I keep for snacks, and one I have a couple of other miscellaneous things. So I've got sunscreen, a compass, generally I'll have a map that I'm using the compass with folded up in the pocket, maybe some bug spray depending on what kind of day it is, what the weather's like, and a knife, and I'll keep those things in that pocket as well. So again, I'll set those things aside and we'll put those in the pocket later. Alright, let's kind of go to the other side. I know I need access to water, right? So that's got to be right there, either top of my pack or outside of my pack or something where it's easily accessible. I've got some wipes. Now, depending on the day, if it's a really bad day or whatever, I think I'm going to need access to the wipes. Sometimes I'll leave those here on top. Sometimes I'll put them over with this stuff, maybe just to use at the end of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and just set them here. I've got a trowel, I've got toilet paper. That's definitely stuff that I want access to whenever I need it without having to dig all the way through my pack. I've got these extra batteries that I know I want to have access to all day. Got my hand sanitizer here to go with that. My water purification system, so I've got my Sawyer and an extra pouch, so I want those easily accessible towards the top, because obviously I'll be filling up water all day. My spoon for food, so I'll have that available. And then I've got a bandana and a towel, and that kind of, I put that in the same category sort of as the wipes. It just depends on the day. I may want to be using the bandana around my neck, around my head, so I'll keep it up on top. If I think, I know what the weather's like, I'm going to be wearing a beanie all day, and I don't need it, then maybe I'll put it with the other stuff. So I'll leave it here for now. Again, a lot of these decisions are day-by-day decisions. One day you may pack one way, and the other day you may pack a little bit differently, knowing what it is that you're going to be up against. Got a trash bag, so I want that up towards the top, so that if I see trash along the way, or if I make any trash of my own, I can put it in there. And now we're kind of down to the clothes. Oh, I forgot the rope here. I've got a little extra rope, and again, I won't need that on my hike most of the time, so I'll just keep that here. Stuff I might use at the end of the day when I'm setting up my tent if I need to secure it a little bit extra. Alright, so I've got my puffy here, and that, like I've said with so many things, depends on the day and what it seems like. If it's just a bitter cold day, I think it's going to be bitter cold all day, then I'll just be wearing this, or I'll put it at the very top, knowing that, I'm going to want to, I'm going to go out and start hiking, and then I'm going to want it on, because I know it's going to get cold towards the end of the day, or something like that. But quite often, I either know I'm going to wear it, or I know I'm not going to wear it, so I'll put it down a little lower in the pack. So, again, it depends on the day. I'm going to go ahead and put it down here, as though something that'll be a little lower. And now I have all my clothes. Now, there may be some things with the clothes, it's a certain individual item. If it happens to be a rainy day, which it always is, it seems like, then you may want to have your rain suit close to the top. Again, your beanie, your gloves, you may do whatever depending on the day. So, once you've kind of figured this out, I think I'm going to put the clothes sort of mid-pack here, maybe right above the food, or maybe right below the food. We'll sort of see how it all fits once we get in there. But I know I don't want it on the very bottom under my sleeping bag. I want to be able to get to it. And I know I don't want it on top above my, above toilet paper and hand sanitizer and my water purification. So it'll go somewhere here in the middle. So now the next step, once we've got everything relatively organized like this, and we kind of know generally how we want to pack it, then I start putting things in stuff sacks. Now some people really don't like to do that because, you know, they just don't like digging through their stuff sack. They have to dig through their pack to get everything out, then they have to dig through a stuff sack to get what they want, and what they want's on bottom or whatever. And you know, I'm just a person that likes more organization. But again, that's kind of your decision. It feels like to me, if I just dump all this stuff into my pack, and then I want this glove, you know, I'm going to be digging through money and ropes and food and all sorts of things to get to that glove. And so I like to kind of have it organized in my mind. So I'm going to stuff the stuff sack very much like I've organized this here. What do I think I'll need and won't need? So I've got socks I'll be wearing for the day. Generally, I don't need a brand new pair of socks that are dry, you know, midway through the day. Maybe I'll access those at night. Now, sometimes I might, and then I'll say, well, darn, I wish it wasn't at the bottom, but it can't be perfect. I've got my rain gloves, balaclava, gloves, hat, a beanie, and 2 extra shirts. Now, you know, again, depends on the day. So if it's a day that's kind of cold, but not that cold, you may be wanting to take gloves and hats off and on, then you may want to pack those towards the top. You know, it just depends. Generally, I kind of know what clothes I'm going to wear. These zip down, and so I can open them up, and I don't have to necessarily take things off and change them that much. So I'm going to take these shirts, whichever one I end up not wearing that day, and I'm going to put them in here next. So I probably won't need access to those. Generally, this is the one I'll wear first, so I'll put that one up higher. And then I'll put my gloves, and then my beanie, because I tend to just change that a little bit more often. And that's, you know, that will be kind of for you to figure out what works best for you. And then we'll tighten up that bag. And so those are the clothes. For me, I don't put my rain suit in a stuff sack. You certainly can, and it'd be perfectly fine to do that. It saves me an ounce on a bag, and really, you know, my puffy, it really helps to have it in here because I don't have a real high dollar condensable puffy, and so this helps keep it contained. These really, when I put them in a stuff sack, it doesn't stuff them down anymore. And so it's a lot easier for me to just roll them up and kind of stick them into wherever I think they'll fit, and that's one less thing I have to mess with when I really need a rain jacket all of a sudden really fast. So I just keep those loose. And then I've got all this miscellaneous stuff here. So this is the bag, the stuff sack that came with my sleeping bag, but since I used the Sea to Summit compressible dry sack, I use this for this stuff on top. So I'll go ahead and just put everything in there, and you know, again, if I think there's one thing I'll use more than another, you know, the electronics I don't get to quite as much throughout the day, I'll put those in the bottom. I'll keep the trowel and the toilet paper and stuff here on top, and the trash. And then, got my water. Now last of all, got to put my food in here. And I know on this hike I'm about to go on that I probably won't be able to get food for about 5 days. So I've got a good 9.5 pounds of stuff right here. Pretty heavy. Definitely not something that you want at the very top of your pack, even though you might want to access it, you know, throughout the day. So, you know, we'll kind of try to err on putting it up as high as we can, but not too high. And in fact, now that I'm thinking about that and kind of talking about it that way, I think I will probably switch these two, because I probably won't need my puffy right away. I'll keep the food up a little higher, and we'll see how it works in the bag, in the backpack. And the last thing, I think I already said last thing, but this is really the last thing, is I've got to put all my end of the day supplies in a stuff sack. And again, probably try to organize this a little better and take up all the space in the corners in there to make sure that it was as compressed as possible, but I'll just, of course, we want to wrap these down 3 times, which I'm not going to do here. Okay, so now we have got everything organized, and it's time to put it in the pack.